Thank you for tuning in to Entertain the Geeky, your source for nerd news.
Hey guys, what's up? Welcome to Nerd News. This is Jason with you as always. I'm joined by my good friend Joe today.
Hello.
Joe, you probably know he's been on several other episodes of the Entertain the Geeky podcast.
Yeah. I go on there, I piss Roger off. I don't talk to them about Star Wars. These are the things.
I don't understand you. This is a man, I will let everybody know, this is a man who's not watched the new Star Wars trailer.
I have not. The director said don't. And my brother told me he really wishes he hadn't. And honestly, I went into the whole thing not wanting a trailer anyways. All I needed was, a preview that just, showed me a starry sky and have Star Wars come up and give me a date. And that's all I needed. That's all I needed.
Yeah.
So, no, I have not watched the newest trailer for it. And I've been trying to do my best to avoid anything related to it.
I mean, I guess while it is true that there is kind of inferred plot points that are given away,
Right.
it really could be two separate shots that are taking place in two different locations, and they just cut them together to make us all think about what's going on.
There's a good possibility of that, and I mean, it's probably nothing extremely to worry about, but again, I didn't need to see anything from this movie. I just needed to know what day it came out.
I mean, yeah.
I was going to go see it regardless.
Well,
so
yeah.
the less I know going into it, the happier I am.
That is not,
I'm already mad that I know that paper exists.
that is not me at all. I have to absorb every single scrap of information that I
I
can.
know. From the 1800 TV spots for every movie that Marvel has ever made that you kept trying to make me watch all the time.
No. I watch TV spots, okay? TV spots are just literally, cut together moments
I know
from trailers that have
Civil
existed.
War had 18 trailers,
It
and
had
you wanted
4.
me to watch.
It
Yeah,
had 4
cool.
trailers.
I needed not 7.
So anyway, we haven't talked in a couple weeks. I apologize for that, but some interesting stuff has cropped up. One of the big things I'd like to start with is Super Mario Odyssey has come out for Nintendo Switch. And while I still personally don't own a Nintendo Switch,
Mistake.
I'm hearing they've with Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild and Super Mario Odyssey, most sites are saying that they've got the 2 biggest games of the year.
Easily. Yeah.
Yeah.
Breath of the Wild was probably the best thing that's ever happened to the Zelda franchise, arguably.
Yeah, we've talked about that at length on the
And
show.
apparently, Odyssey is the same, but for Mario.
Yeah, what I'm hearing is that it is a return to form for Mario. That it's definitely got the framework of what games like Super Mario 64 and Super Mario Galaxy had, but it also introduces a bunch of new elements to make it feel fresh and not feel like just a rehash of something old.
Apparently, it's very familiar, and if you love those, you'll absolutely love it. But it's definitely got its own thing going on.
Well, I'm intrigued by the hat thing. I thought that was really cool.
Him tossing his hat on the things
and being able to take control of things.
Yeah, no, who doesn't want to run around as a giant T-Rex with a Mario hat?
With a mustache?
Yeah,
they put the Mario mustache on all the things that he takes over.
It's so adorable. Honestly, I need a plushie of that for a friend of mine who's a big fan of both dinosaurs and Mario.
Yeah, so it definitely looks like. You see the little things like the triple jump and the things that they've kind of come to be standards for Mario in 3D. But then you get the elements like, Mario's in the real world at some point. There is a part of it that is, I guess the game in and of itself is kind of a sandbox style game.
It is very sandboxy. I think my favorite thing I've seen that I really like about it is there are definitely spots that you weren't designed to be able to get to, but of course because of mechanics they work that way, and the designers knew that going in because they've stuck various rewards in really weird spots that you would only get by doing dumb stuff.
So you've played it, you own it?
No, I've played a little bit of it,
okay.
But I haven't been able to go and get my own copy just yet.
Okay.
Stuff.
Well, when you do, we'll have to have you come back on and talk more about it in detail.
Yeah, for sure.
But it looks fantastic. It definitely looks like something that if you're a Mario fan or if you're just a video game fan, it looks like something that's worth checking out.
Absolutely.
Which is the same with Breath of the Wild.
Yeah.
If you're a Zelda fan, I'm sure it offers so much, but even just a video game fan.
I've beaten it like the main story 3 times, and I'm still not bored of that
Sure.
game at all. There's so much in there.
Well, yeah,
Like right now, I'm just running around trying to collect literally every horse.
Sure.
Because I've got nothing better to do, and it's never not a bad time trying to sneak up on horses.
Right. Well,
Even though they keep kicking you in the face.
well, there's also, what I've heard and what I've seen in videos is like deer and various other things within the world that you
Mhm.
can turn into mounts
Yeah,
for Link.
yeah.
You
Yeah,
know?
dude, it is so hard but so rewarding the first time you manage to corral a bear.
Sure. Yeah,
Like,
riding around on a bear, riding around on
like,
a horse or a
it's
deer.
fucking ridiculous,
Yeah.
but it's so good.
Yeah.
It's so satisfying.
Well, so other game news, we had Paris Games Week last week, and among many of the interesting things that popped up, some weird absent things that I was kind of hoping to see, but we still haven't seen, like the Final Fantasy VII remake and new footage from some upcoming things.
That one's coming real slow.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. They're crafting, they're trying to recreate one of the largest video game worlds ever.
Right.
You
Right.
know, so it makes sense, and they also probably want to add in their own things and try to kind of.
I would just like it before I turn 30.
Yeah, I mean, I would like it before I die.
That would be good.
Yeah.
That would be good.
But one of the big things that popped up was new footage for God of War, which, I mean, as a God of War fan, as somebody who's played every single God of War game, including those little PSP games that they released.
Yeah,
Which
I missed those ones. I
Well,
don't
they-
own a PSP.
I didn't own a PSP either. They remastered them when they did the God of War collection for PS4.
Oh, yeah, they
So
did.
it was God of War 1, 2, and 3, and then the 2 PSP
Well, I only
games.
like kind of own a PS4 right now, so
Sure.
I'll get around to that someday, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, it was Chains of Olympus, Ghost of Sparta. They were short games. They were
Right.
designed for handheld. So.
Right. I heard they were good, but I definitely wasn't like super missing anything by not having played them.
No, they were
So-
worth playing if you were a fan of the gameplay that
Right.
God of War has come to do over the years.
Gotcha.
But they definitely look like with this new game, they're leaving that formula behind, and they're going to try some new stuff.
Yeah,
Norse
like,
mythology.
all the footage we've seen has been real good.
Yeah, and they showed up just like 2 minutes of gameplay footage showing Kratos and I guess his son, or I'm not really sure.
Who we're assuming at this moment is probably his kid, possibly his kid,
He calls
whether
him father?
adopted or not.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
and you would think the thing that always kind of stuck in my craw about Kratos moving on and having children and stuff is how tragically his first family was ripped away from him
Right.
by his own hand,
Right.
no less.
Yeah. No, he's like Hercules, but worse.
Yeah.
Well, the other thing that bothers me about it too is we've heard it mention a couple times of the mother, but we haven't seen her like at all yet. Which, don't get me wrong, we're very early stages, very little footage.
Right.
It's totally understandable, but that concerns me.
Yeah,
So I wouldn't be surprised if he was like just adopting this orphan boy.
I mean that could be too.
You
Yeah,
know,
I mean,
kind of situation, and he just calls him father out of like elderly respect, kind of situation.
yeah, I could see that.
You know,
I mean, hopefully we'll get some more information as time goes on. Again, this was just a quick little gameplay trailer. It didn't really show off any story elements.
no.
Other than the fact that you
some cool
hear,
visuals.
yeah, you hear the kid make reference of Valhalla and Hell, and,
Right.
and
Right.
those kinds of things, which are really cool to hear.
Which makes me, like wonder, has Kratos talked about his history with like the Greek mythology to this kid at all?
Oh no, I mean, I don't know if what they're doing is just gonna leave all that behind and show us a
Right.
new chapter, or if that is what helped shape him into this new person.
Right.
But it's definitely going full Norse mythology now.
For
There
sure.
doesn't seem to be any leftover Greek mythology there at all.
Right.
Um,
Between the beard and the Mjolnir wannabe axe.
Yeah, he's got an axe that he throws and it returns to his hand like Thor's hammer.
I mean, we got Christopher Judge voicing him, and that's just a good time for me.
It's funny to me, and we were talking about this, but it doesn't sound that dissimilar from the old Kratos.
No, for sure. It just sounds like an older, gruffer, maybe slightly wiser because he isn't as loud and brash
Right.
as much, which definitely makes sense. Like, it's a grown character.
Yeah.
But, like, I spotted that voice from a million miles away.
Yeah, I mean, again, I was never a fan of what was it,
Stargate
Stargate.
SG-1?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I saw the movie. I never watched the television show.
Okay. See, yeah. The movie was one thing my dad really liked, and he doesn't like a whole lot of things, so
Sure.
we super watched that show.
Right on.
And it helped that both of my parents were kind of fans of MacGyver, so Richard Dean Anderson brought them in,
Yeah.
and like it It was a great sci-fi show.
Yeah, I can understand that.
And yeah, so I grew up with Christopher Judge as Teal'c, and the moment I heard him popping out of Kratos' mouth, I was just like, all right.
Yeah.
I was excited about new God of War in general. Now I've got Christopher Judge and Norse mythology.
Right.
Just give me a copy right now, please.
Well, yeah, I mean, if they bring any of what they brought to the Greek mythology, into this game, if they bring any of that kind of gravitas that they brought, taking a story that we know who Zeus is, we know who Hera is, we know who Hercules is, but finding new ways to integrate them into what that old God of War story was very interesting. Understanding that Hercules is not a hero,
right?
He was Hera's champion,
right?
But what that meant was that sometimes he was terrible.
Yeah. No, they did a really good job of bringing the old school gravitas of like the original myths, not the ones you learned in grade school,
right? Or saw in a Disney movie,
right? Hera's not that nice, but if they can do that with Norse mythology as well, and I'm fairly certain they can pull it off.
Yeah, I mean this seems like the start of something. I mean we had 5, 6, 7 games in the original God of War story. So you had the three main games. You had the 2 PSP games, and then there was a prequel game, God of War Ascension,
right?
Which was also very, very fun. But those, if that's an indicator, this could be the start of a new franchise for the characters.
It'd be fantastic.
It's so good,
right?
I cannot wait. Every scrap of information that keeps coming up, I am latching onto. I'm that kind of guy. I need to know everything that's going on. But seeing him use the axe, if you're familiar with Kratos and the chain blades, it seems like they're finding a good way to kind of mimic that with the axe.
Yeah, to where you still have like a good distance combat as well as close quarters.
It seems like there's obviously the throwing aspect of it and it returns to you,
right?
But it also seems like it gives off some kind of energy because there's one point in the trailer where he swings it and guys that are at least a few steps away,
right? There's a big splash that goes right through all 3 of their chests, and that was a sweet new power, and I need every part of it.
Absolutely,
I need that axe.
Yeah,
that's what I need. If anybody knows how to craft a magic axe like that, I will pay you much gold. much gold for this axe.
But let's switch gears. We there were some other things that came out of the Paris Games Week that were interesting. But we are literally we just got Thor Ragnarok, and we're going to review that and stuff. We'll talk about that in a separate podcast. But the next thing we're looking forward to is Justice League and Punisher.
Yeah.
Who, which debut the same weekend.
Yeah. Oh, God, it is, isn't it?
Yeah.
I didn't even think about that.
Punisher comes out the 17th.
That's going to be such a busy weekend for me. Because new Pokemon games come out that weekend, too.
Of course.
Yeah.
There's always new Pokemon.
There is.
But Justice League, I'm cautiously optimistic about what this movie will be, because I've been disappointed in the past by things that they've done. Wonder Woman blew me away.
Yeah.
I was excited to see a movie that made me, happy to be a fan of DC again.
Right.
As a movie.
No, I think one of the things that gives me big hope for it, and then the future DC movies, is a statement. I don't know if you saw this, that came out not too long ago from the DC camp as a whole.
Sure.
They're not going to try as hardcore to do like the big shared universe like Marvel's doing.
Yeah.
They're all the individual character movies are just going to be about telling a good story, and not worry too much about how they integrate to each other.
And that's fine.
I'm okay with that.
I'm okay with that too. But Marvel has spoiled me.
That's fair.
This idea that if you're telling me stories that involve the same characters, it should build a world.
That's fair. I mean, I haven't always needed that, and don't get me wrong, I'm a big fan of what Marvel's done with that. Like they've shown what you can do with that kind of thing, but it's not always been that case for movies for most of my life, and I'm okay with not having that.
Right.
I mean, I
guess I am too.
I mean, like the Batman animated series, half of those episodes don't line up to each other in the order they came out in.
Well, sure, but when you look
and that was still the greatest thing that ever happened to Batman.
Well, but when you look at Batman animated series, Superman animated series, Justice League Unlimited, these were all the same universe. They were building the same universe.
Right.
They had the same voice actors. They wanted you to feel as if all of these things happen together. And they're all building on something bigger. And I think that as a model, Marvel has tried to take that, and I think they've succeeded in really creating a narrative through 17 films now that we're up to with Thor Ragnarok. It's 17 films. They've done a good job of crafting this narrative, and I don't get me wrong, I don't want DC to just copy what they've done,
Right.
but I do want to feel like these people exist in the same world.
That's fair.
So I don't need Batman as a singular movie to connect to Justice League, but I do need Batman to feel as if this character is the same guy he was in Justice League.
Well, I'm sure we'll have that, at least,
I hope.
honestly. I'm fairly certain we will.
When you give directors their own creative liberties, sometimes
not so much.
You
I'll
know,
agree to that.
Ant-Man is a perfect example. Edgar Wright's vision for Ant-Man would have been probably spectacular. I mean, Edgar
Right.
Wright is fantastic. He was the man working on it for most of its production.
Right.
And then creative differences, quote unquote creative differences, caused
Right.
him to depart from Marvel, and they gave the role over to Adam McKay, which was great, and the movie turned out really well.
Yeah. I'm sure it fit in much better than Edgar Wright's original.
But that
vision.
was the point, right? Like, his vision was, this is a movie about Ant-Man. This isn't a movie about building the Marvel Universe. This is just a movie about this little thief guy.
Right.
And while I think that probably would have been spectacular to see, I understand why they need these movies to build on each other. So I'm really just hoping that the directors that they get to do these solo projects don't take too much, move too far away from the source.
No, that's definitely a worry.
But regardless, I'm excited.
We've got Danny Elfman doing the soundtrack, and that's all I needed in my life.
Oh, Danny Elfman.
In all
He's
honesty,
the poor
though,
man's John Williams.
did you hear the Heroes theme, like main theme that he released for it?
Yeah, he's bringing back like the classic '80s Batman.
Well, he's bringing that back, but of like the new songs that are produced for it, they released like the Heroes theme, like the Justice
The
theme
Unite the
for
League
it.
theme.
Yeah, and
okay.
it's really good as far as the soundtrack song goes. If you're into that sort of thing and you haven't listened to it, listen to it.
Sure, I'm not saying that Danny Elfman is not a good composer.
No.
But when you look at, if you were to
can't
take,
compete with John Williams.
well, no, I'm not trying to say that. I'm just saying if you look at Danny Elfman's work through
Right.
the breadth of his career, if you compare this to this to this to this, you start to hear that his range doesn't go very far. You start to realize that this guy's got a very singular vision for music.
Right.
Whereas when you look at John Williams, especially with Force Awakens, when they brought him back, he did new music. And yes, there is classic music that is represented as well.
Right.
When you hear those new themes, they capture what they should,
Right.
but still manage to bring something new to the table.
Right.
And again, I'm not comparing Danny Elfman to John Williams because no one compares to John Williams. The man is a master composer.
Yeah.
But
Talented bastard.
But there is definitely something that is similar throughout all of Danny Elfman's scores. And
Yeah.
I am excited to hear the 80s Batman score again.
Yeah.
I am excited to hear that. I think that was something I liked about Spider-Man Homecoming was during the Marvel logo. We had
Right.
kind of a different take
Yeah,
on
you got like
the
an
Spider-Man
updated Spidey theme.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that was a nice throwback
Yeah.
that I really appreciated about that film. But yeah, except
and then-
for Justice League.
Yeah.
Punisher
the
looks
same week.
real good.
I
man.
mean, the same day, Marvel is saying, screw DC, we are going to release a Netflix show
right.
on the same day as one of their big
Right.
movies.
No, and the trailer we got for that blew my mind out of the water for what I expected out of a Punisher show.
Well, and it seems, yes, we have Karen Page, and you
Mhm.
probably have some other references to other things that have been going on in the
Oh, I'm
Netflix
sure.
universe. But it definitely, from trailers, seems like this is going to be a very standalone
Yeah.
kind of story that is not concerned with building the Netflix universe.
Right.
It's just concerned with building Frank.
Right,
As a
which
character.
which is good because Frank doesn't play nice with others,
Yeah.
and he super doesn't fit well alongside everybody else, as
Yeah.
we saw very very easily in season 2 of Daredevil.
Yeah,
I'm
Punisher
okay
is
with
not
him
a defender.
not hanging out. Yeah, no,
No.
God, no. Can you imagine him and Luke Cage trying to hang out? It's not going to go well.
No, not at all.
So yeah, no, I'm okay with it being a little more singular, a little more enclosed on just building Frank. And probably a whole hell of a lot more violent.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm okay with every part of that.
Yeah, I have no doubt that it's going to be,
I know-
especially when you look at it compared to other Netflix shows, I definitely think it's going to be the most violent.
Right.
they've gotten.
I know it'll be the one my brother will critique the most, but that's because he's military and he'll poke at it real hard with that
Well,
stick.
That's the thing that I think is most impressive, or was most impressive about Frank in just Daredevil season 2.
Yeah,
The military advisor was great. I mean,
Yeah,
you see him holding that
they
weapon.
made him look and feel like an ex-Marine,
Yeah.
for sure.
He's holding that weapon properly. He's,
He's got line of sight
he's
correctly.
moving
He's using
properly. Yeah.
cover correctly in and out. They did a real good job.
Yeah, I
I'm
mean,
basically putting him through boot camp.
well, yeah, they hired a military advisor. I don't know what the guy's name is, but they had a military advisor on set for every scene that Frank was in. Look, if the scene sitting in the park, there was a very interesting. If you are the kind of person who looks up weird behind the scenes videos like I am, there was an interesting. The military advisor was on set the day they were shooting the scene in the park where the Irish guys capture him.
Yeah.
And he uses the one guy as a human shield for a part of that. And even though he's supposed to be, he's hit with the sleep darts and supposed to be getting woozy, the military advisor was there kind of talking about how even in those moments, your feet have to be in a certain way. How you assess this situation has to be a certain way. So even though he's falling unconscious, he's still very tactical about the situation.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's not just even training; it's instinct at that point too, because of how hard that stuff would get drilled into you. Yeah. So you have to have it, and they did a real good job. And as long as they've got at least that guy, if not like a team of that guy,
even the tiniest
will be
details.
fine.
Yeah, I'm excited, man. I cannot wait to see it.
No, it's going to be real good.
So before we get done here, I want to touch real quickly on what's been going on recently in Dark Knight's Metal. We are past the halfway point at this point. I mean, as far as the main series goes, we've only had 3 issues, which will be a total of 6. So we're at the halfway point with that. But when you look at the schedule as a whole, from the start of this to the end of this, we are past the halfway point with tie-ins. The Gotham Resistance tie-in is wrapped up. The Bats Out of Hell tie-in has just started. And I want to talk about a couple of the key issues within this story that are kind of building these dark Batman. Most recently, The Drowned and The Merciless, which is the kind of Aquaman crossover and the Wonder Woman crossover.
Right.
The Drowned was very interesting because it's one of the universes where genders are swapped.
Right.
So the men are female and the females are males.
Yeah, that confused me a little the first time I just saw the cover.
Yeah.
But before I knew details, I was like, all right, what did we do?
Right.
What's the key point where this changed?
Yeah. So I'm gonna get into a little bit of spoilery territory here. So if you've not read, either The Drowned or The Merciless, you should go check those out. They're fantastic books, and then come back to us. But so we starting off with The Drowned. Right away, we're introduced to Bryce Wayne as opposed to Bruce Wayne, so a female version of Bruce, who is in a relationship with a Kyle, so a male version of Catwoman. I don't remember the first name of the man at this point, but the Kyle character is killed off, and Atlantis comes forth from the ocean, and they kind of at first are wanting to make peace with the human world, but Bryce, as the kind of tactical thinker that we know Bruce to be, knows, or at least has to plan for the contingencies, has to plan for the terrible things that could happen. And inevitably, things do go bad.
Of course.
Bryce is proved correct, and she undergoes a terrible experimental surgery that alters her DNA, basically making her able to breathe underwater, and
get skills.
Yeah,
really in the water world,
and vomit this what Aquaman refers to as dark water, which is I don't really know how to describe it other than it's literally an ocean of undead creatures that she controls.
Yeah, so you get like the undead sharks from Blackest Night and stuff again.
It comes from her though. It's almost as if she's vomiting up this dark water.
It's real awkward.
It's weird. Yeah, it is strange.
It's awkward to think about.
And she proceeds in Earth Zero, which, if you're familiar, Earth Zero is the prime Earth. So it's the Earth that regular DC comics take place on.
Yeah.
She proceeds to drown Amnesty Bay, and Amnesty Bay is the hometown of Arthur Curry, who is Aquaman. His father lived there because, as we know, his father was human. His mother was Atlantean, so he's part, of both worlds. But yeah, she proceeds to drown it and obviously draws the attention of Aquaman and Mera.
Of course.
And then ends up turning Mera into what I can only describe as a Black Lantern. I mean, you mentioned Blackest Night.
Yeah.
Bryce turns her into kind of an undead thing.
Okay. So kind of like how we saw Superboy and various others in
Fall of the Black Rings.
Okay.
With the exception of the fact that Bryce seems to do this just with the dark water, with her dark powers. She doesn't need a conduit for it. When the dark water washes over Mera, she becomes this thing.
That's awkward.
Yeah.
It's real awkward.
And previews I've seen for books that I have yet to read, seem to show that she even devolves further and she becomes one of the monstrous things.
Okay.
So the things that Bryce controls, it seems, are not just creatures. They are what was once people.
Okay.
Whether that be Atlanteans or humans or whoever.
And whatever gave her this dark water is also poisoning her slowly into a monster.
I mean, I would say she was a monster the moment she made this decision, but
yes. But there's a difference between monstrous personality and monster on the exterior as well.
She is, when you see her in the past, she looks like, just a human with gills and a costume and stuff. But when we see her in Earth Zero, it seems as though her face is a little paler. Okay. There's more kind of, veins and things like this. So yes, she is this power has altered her in some way. But it was a fabulous one shot. I don't think it stands out as much as some of the others have. I mean, I've talked about the Dawnbreaker on the show. I've talked about the Red Death on the show. I don't think it stands out as much as those, but it's definitely worth a read. She is definitely one of the the driving forces behind, just because of how powerful she is. She's definitely going to be one of the driving forces behind them taking over the world.
Oh, absolutely.
Or attempting to.
She can turn people into zombies.
Yeah.
I mean, yes. Yes.
So that we had the Batman Aquaman kind of thing, and then the Merciless was the one that followed that, and that one had kind of an interesting feel as well, because that's a Wonder Woman amalgamation, but it's not. I mean, where you've seen some of these others, they are basically, look, Batman gets a Green Lantern ring, Batman becomes Cyborg, Batman becomes Flash. What Batman becomes in the Merciless is Ares.
Yeah, instead he becomes the God of War.
Yeah, the God of War has decimated the world, and a last-ditch effort of Bruce and Diana, get into this fight, and Diana is seemingly murdered by Ares, and in that moment, Bruce experiences such a traumatic feeling that he deems that no decision is off the table, and he picks up the helmet of Ares, and he puts it on, and in that moment is corrupted beyond repair.
Right.
Proceeds to murder Ares, and then realize that Diana is not actually dead.
Of course.
But she was just
classic.
Unconscious, knocked out, and he didn't take the time.
Mildly comatose for half a second, plot-wise.
And obviously when she realizes what's going on, she tries to take the helmet from him, saying, this has corrupted you.
Yeah.
You cannot wear this.
Tries to save Bruce.
You. Tries to save him.
And that goes about as well as you would think it would.
Yeah, the helmet, it corrupts him immediately, and he murders Wonder Woman.
Yeah.
Leaving everything that he had a connection to.
Because now literally no decision is off the table.
Right. And this power is something that is too tempting for him to give up. And so that's kind of his little backstory. But cut to Earth Zero, we are watching the heads of the various kind of secret organizations in the DC universe. So Argus and Task Force X.
Right.
So Amanda Waller is there. The Phantom, not the Phantom Stranger. The Outsider is there.
Yeah.
Some of these various people, and they're trying to figure out how to deal with this problem of these Dark Batmen. And here comes the Merciless, and he attacks their base, which is clearly some kind of U.S. military base because there's access to nuclear weapons and these kinds of things.
Right. It's basically the Pentagon deep underground.
Sure,
somewhere.
Yeah, it's very deep underground, but he finds them, and they make a last ditch effort to try to stop him by dropping a nuclear bomb on themselves, basically.
I wonder how many megatons they used.
It is a big bomb.
I mean,
you see it. It's a suborbital bomber, right? Being flown by Carol. Carol Ferris is actually there.
Okay.
And various other characters. And
I'm sure they used the biggest one they could get
it
their
is
hands
big.
on.
Yeah,
I'm
it's
just,
big.
I'm curious about the specifics, but regardless,
But
it doesn't go well.
Right, they drop this nuclear bomb, and Batman pretty much just absorbs it. Right. He just it doesn't hurt him at all.
Right. It does some devastation, but he's basically that little balloon thing from Mars Attacks.
Yes.
It just sucks it all in.
All in, and he.
Well, I mean, it's a weapon of destruction, and he is the god of war. Of course, he'd feed off of that. Why would you think that would work?
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, I would prefer just to hug him. That might work. Like, he might get really pissed off and kill you, but there's a possibility it could hurt him a little. I guess.
Yeah.
But a bomb wasn't going to help.
Yeah, it was definitely a bad decision on their part, and in the aftermath of this, they realized that, and we see, him sitting on what is like a throne of rubble, and all of them literally bowed and knelt before him as a king.
Right.
And, thusly so, he...
I like to think the rubble fell that way, too.
Right.
Into a throne perfectly.
Yeah, so he could sit down.
Yeah. And rest his weary feet.
And then he proceeds to murder Steve Trevor. At least that's what the implication is that he's going to murder Steve Trevor.
Right.
But he takes the helmet off in that final moment, and what we see is a Bruce who, this is a Bruce that is, when we watch him on his own Earth, is still Batman, is still young, is still in his prime.
Right.
What we see now is a gray, bearded, old man.
Right.
And it's almost as if, at least the implication is that the helmet not only has corrupted his mind, but has corrupted him physically.
Yeah. It's aged him into Odin.
Right. He looks like how they portray Ares without his helmet on.
Right.
In the past, on his own Earth.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, those are two. There's a one shot that has come out since then, and the next part of the Bats Out of Hell crossover. I've not had a chance to pick those up and read those, but we are inching ever closer to the end of this story, and we are inching ever closer to what I am most excited to read is The Batman Who Laughs. Our final one shot.
Yeah.
We've gotten all this information about all these other Dark Batman. The one that came out this past week was the Devastator, which is kind of the Doomsday amalgam, which I've read a couple of little plot details. Apparently, Superman goes evil. Batman has to stop him.
Right.
He turns himself into Doomsday.
It's injustice for half a second.
Exactly. And I don't think there's any explanation for the reason why Superman goes evil, but I don't think there has to be.
I mean, I'm sure
that's not the focal point.
If there is, it involves Lois dying in some horrible way.
Sure,
he just snaps, because we might as well just... It's a tried and true route. You just use it and call it a day.
Yeah, I don't need reasons.
Nobody's going to be mad about that,
right.
really. That's not the focal point of the story. We can move on.
Right. But, so I will check those out, and I'm probably gonna, put the brakes on as far as, Dark Knight's Metal talk until we have a more, at least until number 4 or maybe even number 5 is out, so we have a more kind of focal point, because everything now has just been chaos and them all kind of reacting to said chaos.
Right.
As far as formulating plans, they are trying to, but none of those plans have actually been put into action yet.
Right.
Because, again, we're just now past the halfway point. So I will probably put the brakes on, and we'll wait until we have a little more information before we come back to it. But it's been a roller coaster. I mean, even the tie-ins, which are usually kind of not the best part of a crossover event, have been fantastic. There's not been a bad issue of this story. Every part of it's been really good, and I highly, highly recommend that you go out, you check it out, especially if you were a fan of New 52 Batman, this is basically the culmination of everything they built with that story. So it's worth a read if you're a fan. But that's going to bring us to the end. We are going to, some point in the future, get a Thor Ragnarok review up. I figure we'll probably wait a little while.
Just to give let some more people see it.
To see the movie.
So that way, more people can listen to it without it being ruined for them.
But we are going to do a spoiler review.
Hulk's in it.
Hulk and Valkyrie and Loki. Oh my god!
Who would have thought?
But yeah, so sometime in the future we'll get up a Thor Ragnarok review. We'll give you all a little time out there to check it out. Remember, if you're listening to this and you're having trouble finding it on your podcast reader, we are not under the main Entertain the Geeky banner anymore. We are under our own You have to, whatever podcast reader you use, whether that be iTunes or Google Play or whatever, just search Entertain the Geeky Presents Nerd News, and you will find not only the new episodes, but all the old episodes there as well. Thanks for sitting in with us. Thanks, Joe, to hanging out with us today.
Hey, thanks for letting me be around.
I miss you. I got to do this more.
I know.
You know what? I need a regular co-host on this show.
Yeah.
I hate just sitting here talking about myself.
I mean,
it's terrible.
that's fair. That gets boring. I got to read some more comics and catch up to you, and then.
I mean, I can always brief you.
I mean, that's fair. No, I'd be interested. We'll figure out a schedule.
We'll talk.
I'll try to be around more.
We'll talk about it in the future.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Thanks for sitting in, and make sure to keep tuning in to Entertain the Geeky. Check out the website, entertainthegeeky.com. There's links to all the Facebook and the Twitter. Leave us some comments. Let us know what you think about what we're doing. Let us know if there's anything you'd like to hear. Until next time, thanks, Joe. Stay geeky out there, guys.